This conference will now be recorded.
Good evening, everyone. Thank you for joining the Kingston City Land Bank at our monthly board meeting. Today's Monday, October 26, 2020. My name is Caitlin Armstrong, and I am the Senior Account Clerk for the Kingston City Land Bank and the organizer for our virtual meeting. Before we begin, I'd like to go over a few guidelines in order to navigate this meeting as efficiently and respectfully as possible. We ask that all members of the public mute themselves for the length of the meeting, with the exception of the 10 minutes reserved for public comment. As organizer of the meeting, I reserve the right to mute anyone who unmutes themselves. I also reserve the right to pause the meeting and eject anyone acting inappropriately. The board members and staff will be in charge of their own mute buttons. Just a reminder, good practice is to mute yourself when you are not speaking in order to avoid interference of background noises and feedback. If a board member wishes to speak, they will raise their hand and the chairperson will call on them before they speak, stating their name clearly for all our audio listeners. All of our meetings are recorded and transcribed. They'll be posted on the City of Kingston website. Thank you for your patience during this difficult time. I'll now turn the meeting over to our chairman, Daniel Cantor.
All right, sorry. I know how to do this now. So I guess we're just missing Serena, but let's get started. I don't know. Has anyone heard that she's not coming? Okay. So I think we can get through this pretty fast tonight. It's been do I call to order on campus? It's 6:35. We're calling to order. It's been a active and interesting month. So we got the RFPs issued for the 3 properties that we're redeveloping a couple of weeks ago. We did walkthroughs on Friday. We have more walkthroughs this Friday. If you'd like to join, you're welcome to. Bob, I think, is planning to come. We had, I think, 5 contractors come through last week, so I'm hoping that we have a pretty good pool to choose from and that they do follow through and bid. So that's exciting. In addition to that, we met, so we brought in Jeff Neal, who's the Director of Finance for Albany County. He came last week and met with myself, Mike, Steve, John, the comptroller, the assessor, I can't remember his name, I'm sorry, Janet Higgins from Court Counsel, Kevin Bryan from Court Counsel, to kind of all get a little bit more on the same page about the foreclosure process generally and sort of at what point the land bank becomes involved. So I think that was a very productive meeting. It's sort of the beginning of a longer process, I think, but really good. And Jeff is a great guy who's very, very generous with his time for reasons I won't try to analyze, because don't look a gift horse in the mouth. He's great. In addition, we've been talking more to the Novo Foundation. I think you guys know we have a regular call with a woman named Bethany, who is assigned kind of to the land bank to make sure that everyone's communicating and everyone's on the same page. So we have a call with her tomorrow. We're working toward a more comprehensive grant agreement. And so stay tuned for that. It layers very neatly on top of the existing enterprise grant, so basically makes up for any potential lack of funding there, and will keep us up and running, which is great. So I kind of skipped over. Normally we do a public comment period just to preempt, because I recognize you guys now. So we are still in the investigation process with the Rodney Street property. We are aware that there are title issues. We are working through how to best resolve them. It's a very complicated property, but Dan, I know we're I swear we're working on it. I'm not just saying that. It really is the constant thing that we're trying to unstick. And the same thing with the Hasbrook Avenue and Grand Street properties. Again, no major changes there. We're just trying to work through a couple of title issues and a possible recognized environmental condition that may or may not be something. I'm going to guess it's not something because I'm optimistic that way. So that's that. Having said that, would any members of the public like to speak? James.
Let me just unmuting myself here. Can you guys hear me okay? Yeah, I was wondering if and when these properties do become available to the land bank, when it might be possible to get into the properties and just look at them and see what kind of condition they're in. And also you mentioned something about a potential environmental problem on Grand Street, and I was wondering what that is. That's pretty much all I have to ask, and I'll mute myself.
So basically, the environmental thing was very typical oil tank. They saw pipes, they have to note it. So there's another kind of round of investigation that happens. I'm not super duper clear on the process, but basically that's when they will, I think, deem it something that needs to be remediated or not. In terms of getting into the property, so basically the process simplified is that the land bank would acquire the property, the acquisition and disposition committee would have a spirited debate over, kind of where to take it. On that one, I think it's quite likely that it would be an as-is sale, but obviously that is not a commitment of any sort. It's just sort of based on what I know right now. From there, we would more than likely issue a request for proposals that would basically ask for, what the redevelopment plan is, proof of funds, et cetera, et cetera. The land bank would evaluate those proposals and, vet them, make sure it's all legit, and then authorize the disposition to the buyer. Mike, does that sound about right? Okay. Yeah, so it's a bit of a process after we acquire it. It will likely be a few months before we'd be ready to dispose of it. But obviously we will yell to the world when we've gotten it, and we have to post it on our website, I believe, within 2 weeks of acquisition. For the first ones, we were much faster than that, I believe. So it will not be a mystery when we do acquire it. Yeah, Dan.
Hello, everyone. Everyone can hear me all right? Cool. Yeah, looks very excited to hear that anything's happening with the house. Couple questions and like a comment. So question would be once the house is acquired by you, what would be, so obviously the other houses you've already decided to renovate and work on. These houses, are you planning to work on them at all? Obviously I don't want you to, because I want to work on it myself, but it's, just curious about that. What would be the plan there? Let's just do one question at a time. Muting myself.
Yeah, I don't want to work on it either. So I think that decision has not been made yet. I can say that it would not fall within the geographic area of our grant agreement for properties that we would be rehabbing in 2021. So assuming that we can resolve these title issues before that, I think we would be likely not planning to rehab it. There's always a potential that the land bank could step in and do some stabilization work, but those decisions are still a little ways away. yeah.
Cool, answers that question. Even though I understood it's not like a super definite, just kind of wanting to know like what the conversations have been had about, whatever, like what the mood is for the property. And then the other thing would be like, would it be put out for like bid, or would it be like under like from what I read on the website, it was like there's like multiple factors, like it would be like this is the highest bidder, but it would be like who fits the like standard of who you're trying to sell to.
So again, those are sort of committee level and then board level decisions. I think our mission kind of speaks for itself, and we're very committed to meeting the mission with every property that we possibly can. So I don't view any of these properties as sold to the highest bidder, kind of unless we have to. I think the board and I are on the same page there. So yeah, I think it would more than likely follow the RFP process that I just described to James, where we would be, looking for qualified proposals that, really have the capacity to complete the rehab. And there would be sort of various checkpoints of us sort of enforcing that and making sure that things are going according to plan, or if not, there's a good reason for it. But I think that's probably how that property will end up. But again, the title issues we haven't gotten a ton of clarity on why they're so complicated, but they are. Oh, Mike has something to add.
Thank you. Maybe I could just add a little bit of insight as to why the title issues that have been part of the investigation has been ongoing since July. It appears that it might be the case that the right parcel wasn't necessarily foreclosed upon in the right way, and that parcel might be vacant, or that may be the case that the parcel that was foreclosed upon had some issues with a mortgage lender. We have yet to receive the full documentation, to kind of give us a clear picture of that. So everything Daniel said is 100% totally accurate. I just wanted to add to that the title issues may be the case that we may not be able to get a clear title in order to acquire that property. We're not sure yet. So I just wanted to say that, if that's helpful, just to be transparent. Thanks.
Yeah. Yeah.
One final thing. I've decided not to join like the contractors thing, like wanting to work on any of the houses, just because I don't want to jeopardize getting that house, like just in case somebody says, oh, well, he's working over here on this job and then you sold him a house, like what's going on. So, but I do, I'm very interested in construction, especially in Kingston and stuff. I want to give you guys a heads up because with all the craziness going on with everybody buying houses and stuff, I've seen a lot of contractors, big and small, telling clients that they don't need building inspections or permits or whatever. And I just wanted to just you guys can totally, you're already a part of like the city, you're already close. I don't foresee this really happening to you guys, but just as a heads up, and also like a encouragement to keep being really call the building inspector yourself and call the plumbing, make sure. Because I've been walking to jobs that are like, oh, they told us we didn't need one, or the people just, that maybe they're lying, but just wanted to give you a heads up.
Yeah, thank you. That's sort of disturbing information. I also do this for a living, so I'm well aware of the permitting process, and we will be following it carefully. And yeah, that's not up for debate. But thank you. Okay, I think public comments. I think we're done, unless
there is somebody else, Patrick.
Patrick.
That joined. If he can, I don't know if he wants to identify himself. If he can identify himself, I think he's sending me a message, so I don't know if he can talk. But I'm going to read that now. Oh.
Yeah, I'm Patrick. I sent a message there. I was just curious, as far as dealing with the land bank, is there any, are there any stipulations going forward if you were to acquire one of the properties? do you have any obligation to the land bank going forward? Say 10 years down the road, you decide you're going to move out of the area and you wanted to resell the property. Do you have to resell to the land bank? Does the land bank have any say and process going forward from there?
Short answer, yes. So the details of that are kind of still being worked out. We have a little bit of time before we're going to be embarking on our first dispositions, but there will more than likely be a few different possible things. So a enforcement mortgage that would or disincentivize somebody from not maintaining the house as a primary residence for a certain number of years. That number of years is not quite decided yet. There would likely be a affordability restriction. So basically, the goal is not to kind of trap people in their houses, but it's also to ensure that nobody's looking at this as an opportunity to flip a property and make $1 million. You can, make your money back that you put into the house, and there's a whole formula that's pretty tried and tested for how this can work, but it's not a kind of free market, free for all once we're out of the picture. What else? Is that kind of it, Mike? What else?
I think that's accurate. This is Mike, Patrick, if you're not on video. Just to add to what Daniel's saying, the devil's in the details. As Daniel said, we need to finalize what the details would be. But if you were to get to the point where you wanted to sell your home, there would be a formula for calculating what it looks like. And so the philosophy of it is, Daniel said, not to trap people in their homes or make sure that they're unable to deal with personal circumstances, but it's not the case that, housing that will come at a significant cost more than what it will be selling it for would come for free. So there'd be some kind of repayment requirements at the end of the day. But we shall see. It's not, if that helps.
That seems fair. And just, thinking about a homeowners association sort of a approach, does the land bank get to say what color you get to paint your house? If you wanted to put a, in-ground pool in, are there any other stipulations along the way that the land bank would be able to weigh in on?
No, not really. For rehabs that we are undertaking ourselves, we have sort of a set of guidelines and standards. If we were not doing that, it would be pretty much up to you. And with the caveat that if the property happened to sit in the historic area, what's the right term? The historic neighborhood, basically like Fair Street and Broadway. We don't currently have anything in that part of town. That would be an encumbrance, but not a land bank one. You would have to talk to the Historic Commission for approvals on things like paint colors and windows and things like that.
Okay. Not to play devil's advocate too much, but I mean, imagine if you got the property and you just tore it down. I mean, it seems like there has to be some guidelines that.
Well, it would be pretty silly. You mean if a private owner were to tear it down after acquiring it from us?
Yeah, I'm kind of going to the other end of the extreme, as far as someone saying what color you can paint your house.
That's a
versus
good I think the issue there would be that the contract, the deed, the mortgage would all be kind of contingent on there being a house getting rehabbed. I mean, you wouldn't likely be awarded the contract of sale if that was the proposal. I think, demolition especially is pretty devastating, especially in a city like Kingston where zoning restrictions have changed. So if a house is torn down, in general, it is gone forever. It cannot be rebuilt because the lot sizes are too small for new construction without a variance. Not to mention that the market, at least historically, has not really been able to bear new construction making a whole lot of sense because it exceeds the value of the property at the end of the day. So good question. Definitely something we'll be aware of. We do not want to see these houses get demolished, is the short answer. Mike has something to add.
I would just add, if it's your primary residency and you tear it down, it'll get very challenging very quickly. So totally understand your question, Patrick, but I think we'll have the, kind of the framework in place to ensure that those who purchase will be using it as their primary residence. And so were they to tear it down, that would probably not be the person that we would look towards selecting.
Understood. Thank you, guys.
Yeah. Hey, Patrick, do you mind identifying your last name as well? I didn't catch that.
Connors.
Connors, thank you very much.
Sure.
Okay. Thanks, everybody. All right. I'm going to move on to chair announcements, which I sort of started, but we'll get into this, I guess, in the governance committee report, but I sent around proposed bylaw amendments a couple hours ago. I'm sorry, it's sort of a last minute thing. They are very minor. One change is just putting 17 Hoffman as our address rather than City Hall, considering that's where our offices are. And the other one is a proposal to shift our annual meeting from November, which is sort of strange and arbitrary, to January, more customary. And Aneshka is going to kind of describe the reasoning behind that. It's in large part because the terms of 3 board members, myself included, are expiring at the end of the year, which has been defined as through November, I guess, or I guess through the end of October. So anyway, we've had a bunch of discussion on the governance level of the process of appointing and reappointing board members for second terms, and so the switch date of the annual meeting is related to that. So with that being said, can we vote to adopt the prior meeting minutes from last month? Has everyone had a chance to review them?
I think the dog voted yes.
Oh no.
Do I second the dog?
So my dog has moved to the minute. I'm not sure that's allowed by ABO rules, so maybe someone wants to submit a motion.
I'll
Bob,
move to
you're trying to,
approve
but
the minute.
oh, thank you. Someone want a second?
I'll second.
Okay, all in favor of passing last month's minute? Oppose? Abstain? Motion passes. Thank you. Bartek, beautiful minutes as always. Okay. Mike, tell us the good news while I get my door.
When your dog starts barking, Daniel, my new puppy starts barking. So I apologize if, as I'm saying this, a dog starts barking. Good evening, everyone. It's nice to see you all again. I think Daniel covered in broad strokes the majority or the entirety of everything that I think has moved forward this month. I thought it might be helpful maybe to walk through the steps of the RFP process in more detail, not in too much detail, but just to kind of give you the goals and the deadlines and the timelines for what everyone is doing. and maybe add a little more detail to what we've gotten. So it came out on the 13th of this month. As Daniel mentioned, we had walkthroughs last Friday. That was with 4 general contractors. In my opinion, they were all qualified to do this work, at least at this point, because they had submitted through our RFQ process. So they were vetted through that. Next, this Friday, we currently have an additional 5 contractors walking through with us. So it's a pretty good response. Ultimately, in my experience, you hope to get really like 3 or 4 qualified bids back from a pool of that large. So I look forward to that. Bob, it'll be great to see you if you're walking this Friday. I really appreciate your eyes and ears on this whole process and helping with the RFP itself. So that will be very good. We generally have a time period of till November 15th, not generally, we actually have a time period of November 15th when contractors have time, now that they've walked through the site, to come back to us with any questions or requests for clarification in writing. Things that have come up during the first walkthrough that I kick myself every time I do an RFP for not putting out there would be to say in big bold letters, this is not a prevailing wage job. So I think that's very helpful. It was just so I overlooked it, and I will be issuing that as a clarification. That's the only one that's really come up so far. I think we have a pretty good set of documents to bid, but those will be responses back to us. I'm just walking through the RFP, Daniel. So the 15th, the RFIs come back, the responses are due December 1st, and then it will go through a process internally within the land bank to vet and recommend which contractors maybe we could bring in for interviews, speak with their references, obviously look at what they're proposing, and see that through to a contract signing somewhere throughout December, maybe the 2nd or 3rd week, with a commencement date of January 1st, which is basically the outline for these first 3 homes. The other piece of information I just forgot to add, about a second clarification I will issue, is that the land bank, as a 501c3, has the opportunity to allow contractors to use that tax exempt status for the purchase of materials. So I missed that as well. It's not the end of the world. No one submitted a bid, but that'll be another thing, and I think that'll help to keep our pricing where it needs to be. So that's another piece of the RFP process. On the funding updates, I think Daniel has quite thoroughly covered kind of where we're at with Novo and our current grant application, where we hope to be with our next round of funding with Novo. The application into Novo, they do understand, is tied into this RFP process, and so we won't be able to sign contracts without the ability to show that we can pay for the amounts of those contracts. So we're negotiating on the same time frame, roughly, as the RFP with Novo around that first grant application renewal. If there are any questions, please stop me along the way. I'm trying not to skip over anything, but that's where I think we're at in terms of funding. On the county updates, I had said last month that I would take that off the list because I had been.
Excuse me, Mike, I just want to get a clarification. What is the amount of the grant that is being applied for?
So the grant to the Nova Foundation is a 2-fold one, and we haven't really finalized exactly where we're going to end up in terms of numbers. Our next, as Daniel, I think, mentioned, our next call with the representative from Novo is now tomorrow at 2 o'clock. And so we have yet to get any response back from them about exactly where we're at, but in a nutshell, like Daniel said, it's the funding that we need to finish the phase 1 homes. Not that we don't have the funding currently, but we don't want to run too close to the bone on that. And then some additional support funding going forward. And that would be a phase 1 proposal. The verbal that we've received from Novo is that they very much appreciate that this is somewhat of a limited scope in terms of the ask. And they believe that that's a good thing. For the next phase, which would encompass a much more comprehensive, set of parameters and sort of scoping and desire to try to do more, I don't know what the curvature of that funding could possibly look like. It would definitely include some agreements about what we would or possibly could be acquiring when, what the support would need to look like behind that for the desired outcomes that we first have to all agree as to what those are. So I don't know yet, but I believe we'll be happy to keep everyone in the loop as that progresses. We're just trying to get through the first one, and we'd have more updates later this week on that for sure. Cool. I was mentioning sorry, Daniel, did you? Okay. Green light, I'm like Pavlovian. So the county updates, I did actually meet with a representative from the county on the 16th last week. That's last week, 2 weeks ago. But we did sit down, have a coffee, touch base on where the land bank is at. I did give them updates on kind of the RFP, which had been released 3 days prior. And the conversation was consistent with the conversations that I've had since May, which was what could the next steps be to begin a dialogue around the possibility of discovering what it might look like to potentially have a discussion about the county and the city working together to form a combined land bank. My request at the time, which was consistent with I think every request I've made, is if the county were to submit something in writing, that would be distributed immediately to all board members for discussion, and I've received nothing yet, but I don't think that means that the discussion has slowed down. It's probably just a busy time, and I will update everyone accordingly on where or if that goes anywhere. I just wanted to give that brief update. And then in my other category, I would just like to highlight that we have a bi-weekly meeting starting with Corp Counsel's office following the meeting that Daniel mentioned last week to sit down with our attorney and Corp Counsel's office to really kind of dig in to moving forward with the properties that we're looking at. Just make sure that any title issues that may be taking a little while to sort out, we can focus on them directly and have that meeting in person. Brian would be on the phone for most of these meetings, most likely. But those start on this Wednesday. We're very excited to move that into the next phase of trying to unstick a couple of things, and we feel very positive about it. We haven't had the meeting yet, but meeting last week I think was very, very helpful to kind of orient everyone. And then my final update would be on the staffing side. As you know, when we released the RFP, we also released 2 job postings for a CFO and a construction project manager. We most likely should have those positions filled before we sign the contracts with the contractor, specifically the construction project manager role. So I will begin reviewing those and starting to collate kind of what it looks like for next steps to make recommendations and keep everyone in the loop starting next week. I really wanted to get through the walkthroughs with the general contractors and all of that, but that will begin in earnest starting next week. Those are my updates, unless there are any questions. Hey, Karen.
Hey,
Hey.
Karen, we're here. Just wanted to ask if you had a good response from for those 2 job listings.
We have. I haven't yet dug through the mailbox that receives the postings. I would say offhand, it has not been more than 50. I think it's probably more than 5. So if you know anyone, please send it around. I know we've also probably spoken to people who said they're very interested and they're looking forward to submitting. You can go through our website. It's a great, easy way to submit, much easier than I was hoping it even could be. So verbally, a lot of people have said they were going to apply. We probably have like 5 or more qualified applicants at this point, but I won't really dig in until next week. Thanks.
Thank you. Everything's fine, by the way. It was just my neighbor. If I can just rearrange a little bit, because I think what Mike just said sort of dovetails into the Acquisition Disposition Committee, which did not meet this past month, but we are basically essentially dealing with these title issues right now. So the meeting that happened last week, I think was super helpful. We have a bi-weekly meeting with Janet from Corp Counsel, who essentially handles the foreclosures in the city and the wealth of information. We're trying to kind of get to a point where the land bank is involved a little bit earlier in the process. And we learned last week that in Albany, the land bank has basically supplied a list of the properties that are kind of in the early stages of the foreclosure process once these 90-day letters go out. I guess it's not that early in the process, but a little bit before we're finding out. So that would be a big improvement, I think, just so that we can plan better. We have asked for a title report. So we've sort of rearranged things. We were running title reports on everything pretty much. We found out that the city does run a title report when they foreclose. And so ideally, so what they do in most other places evidently is that title company that runs that search for the municipality also will supply title insurance to the next owner, which would be us. Our title insurance in the city of Kingston is not set up that way. We will be trying to make it set up that way. But in the meantime, we've expended some not insignificant funds on title searches, only to sort of find out that the Corp Council already knew some of these problems. So trying to resolve that. We have 5 properties on the table that are located in Midtown, which is the requirement for the additional 2 homes, that they're located in Midtown. So we are investigating all 5 of those, and hopefully there will be at least 2 practical options. So that's kind of the update there, I think. Mike, do you have anything to add to that? So yeah, it's a little bit of a weird period, but I think once these things get ironed out, we'll have a much more streamlined ability to acquire property, and hopefully a much cheaper path too, because these title searches add up. Okay. Any questions, comments? Cool. Finance and audit, Omari.
Hey, yeah, this is Omari. We didn't meet this month, but I think, Mike, do you have an update on the ABO budget reporting?
This is Mike. I would say Caitlin did a great job and got it done early this time.
All right.
I found our ABL reporting before the deadline. Thank you very much.
This was a group effort, Mandy and Caitlin, but Caitlin really made the push and pressed the submit button, and we got it in order. So thank you, Caitlin. That's my update on it.
That's great. Done and done.
Until March, when it's due again.
Yeah.
Cool. That it?
Yeah, that's it.
Groovy. Okay, governance committee, just before I forget and pass the baton to Aneshka, I wanted to officially appoint Robert Dennison to the governance committee, if he accepts. Great, you're in. Cool, so Bob is going to kind of take the lead on performance evaluations for staff and board. He has much more expertise in this than I do, so I'm very happy to have his help there. And so that sort of dovetails into, I think, what Aneshka is going to tell you about, which is how we are thinking about this appointment process as certain terms are turning over. So with that, Aneshka.
Yes, so welcome, Bob. That's great that you're joining us, and I look forward to these performance evaluations. They've been kind of like left dangling for quite some time. Yeah, so one of the things that actually most of our meeting, we discussed the timing of the open or not open, but the turnover of 3 board member seats. One is Daniel, one is Alana's, and one is Karen. And so the main thing that we have to do is figure out the timing of everything. So the reason for us changing the bylaws and setting the annual meeting now to January of 2021 is because we wanted to have a little bit of a moment to do the following. First of all, board members will now be seated until December 31st of 2020. That's the, kind of when the year will end now, and we'll start our annual meeting in January 2021, as I said. So with that, what will happen is that once we approve the bylaws and this new change of the annual meeting, it goes without saying that we're going to approve the bylaws change of address, because that's obvious, that already happened. It's just those two changes are what we have to approve. Once we approve that, there'll be we can go forward with this whole process of evaluation of the turnover board members. And also the way that it would work is the board members would be evaluated, the recommendations to the board would actually, the board would recommend to Steve what they think about the board members going forward, and Steve then would have the authority to declare an open seat, or open seats plural, depending on who he deems to want to go forward. And Steve's, so far been very collegial, or not collegial, I'm like using university speak, kind of really working with the governance committee and the board to follow recommendations, but he in the end has the final say. So I think the timing then would be the open seat would be advertised in December, and we would find open seats, directors to fill, and they would be seated at the annual meeting. Do I have that right, Daniel? Did I go through that correctly?
Yeah, so I think the basic framework is that we're going to try to have kind of a more formalized evaluation thing in place within the next few weeks. Probably.
Right, that's the important part. That we'll all be actually evaluated, because it is time for our annual evaluations.
So toward the end of November, the governance committee will reach out to myself, Alana, and Karen to try to schedule a time that the committee can meet with you guys, and myself. I'll obviously recuse myself from my own process, but to talk about, the past, for Alana, 2 years, for Karen, 8 months or something, and whether you want to continue to serve, all of that kind of stuff. I personally don't mind at all if more of the board wants to be involved in that process. We just have to be careful of if we have a quorum. I think we would basically have to advertise a meeting, and in the agenda it would just be an executive session, I believe. But in any case, then we would make a recommendation to Steve at the end of November. Steve would appoint or not in December, I guess early December. And then if there are open seats, we would advertise that. And have, when we did this 6 months ago or whatever, we had kind of a little interview process over Skype. And then made recommendations to Steve for the final appointment. So that's how we're thinking about it. Yeah, we didn't want to end up with any kind of lapse in having board chairs filled and things like that. So I think this process feels good to me. And there's nothing really explicitly in the bylaws out the process overall, so we can kind of be flexible.
Yeah, so do we have to now call for a vote on the bylaws, Daniel?
No, so we are formally introducing the
Oh, yes,
proposed
the vote will happen next month.
next month's meeting. We will vote. So what would, assuming that it passes, I don't think, unless if somebody can think of a reason it shouldn't, but I would assume it would.
You have to have the 30 days in between.
Right. So what would be our annual meeting next month will just be a regular meeting, and then we'll do a annual meeting in January, which is pretty much just when committee members get appointed and we elect chair, vice chair, treasurer, secretary, and it's a whole lot of fun. And I will probably flub the process, but I'll do my best. Cool. Aneshka, does
I think that was pretty much the only thing that we discussed at the meeting. So that's it for me.
Really? Bartek.
The committee did not meet this month, and I have nothing to report.
Cool. Okay. I guess I'll just note we have had some improvements to our website. Rebecca has helped us revamp the submittal process. She supplied a new logo for our Instagram, which is nice, for the little circle instead of a rectangle. That's kind of what I know about that. Mike, do you have any other? Cool. All right.
May I have something pertaining to the communications committee? What is the how do we go forward with, you know, communicating all of this stuff to the public? That's I kind of wanted to know what the landscape looks like for that. Does anybody have? Mike, do you want to go and tell us?
I have some thoughts, if that's all right. This is Mike. I think in terms of the community engagement piece of where the land bank, you know, has so many opportunities to talk to the public about exactly what we're doing, at least with the phase 1, 3 homes, that will all come sharply into focus when we get to the point where we are signing the general contract with the contractor. And around that time, I hope we will have also settled concurrently the second round of funding with the Nova Foundation. When all of that comes together, then it will be fixed what we will be selling the homes for, what that means in terms of affordability, what our schedule looks like. That will also be in the contract, what the finished packages will look like for the homes themselves, what opportunities may exist, I hope, for community engagement around some of the pieces that are not in the scope of work. And by that, I mean landscaping and additional kind of community engagement opportunities towards the end of the schedule of construction. I think there are a whole lot of things that will come into focus very sharply when the contract is signed with the contractor, if that helps. Thanks.
This is Karen. Aneshka, I'd actually, so for the fundraising committee, which may still consist of one, but I had jotted down some thoughts just on, you know, sort of strategizing. And one of those things that I did was overlay where the fundraising committee could, you know, overlap with other committees. And there was one very obvious one, which was a direct mail campaign that could be sort of like a series of informational, either little postcards or some kind of, you know, I mean, these are very rough thoughts that I had, but I thought just sort of like some really basic information, because, you know, almost anyone that I mentioned the land bank to, you know, just really doesn't know very much. And so I thought maybe that could be a way for, you know, maybe after these benchmarks that Mike has mentioned, we could think about doing a series of postcards that just give a little more information each time, or something along those lines, some kind of outreach strategy, that sort of does two things: informs the public, more of the public, and starts engaging people in the organization and gets them going to the website, things like that.
On that note, I think Aneshka, can I appoint you to the finance committee? Are you still game?
Yes, I volunteered last month. Yes.
Okay, so in case I can't remember if that was on email or not. Anyway, in case we didn't do it, Aneshka, you are officially appointed to the fundraising committee, which makes 2. We could really use 3. We can go up to 4. Tell your friends. I don't know. Unless there's any other volunteers right now. Okay, no. It was worth a try. New business, I think that wraps up that. New business, I guess I would say, I think now is kind of finally a very good time for us to start embarking on a strategic planning process. I think we are kind of finally much more clear with funding than we were, a few months ago. And so kind of as part of figuring out these grant applications, also just so we're kind of all on the same page, also so that we can message correctly to the community, et cetera, et cetera. I think we're kind of there. So I would like to try to schedule some sessions, I think, over the next couple of months, and kind of as engaged as we can be in the process. I think the better. But I think that's exciting and something that several of you have kind of been itching to get done. And so Mike and I have talked about it. I think it's kind of time. So that's good. So we'll send some emails out and try to schedule some things. I think probably there'll be like a couple hour session to start, to really nail this stuff down. But I'm very excited that, we'll have deliverables and goals, and not that we haven't, but a little more formalized. So that's my new business, I guess. Mike, any other new business? Anyone else have any new business? Or old business? Mike?
The only thing I would mention that would add to what you said about strategic planning is the possibility of the Novo Foundation possibly helping us by bringing someone on board in a consulting capacity that the Novo Foundation is offered to pay for. So that would add to this effort.
Yeah, not in any kind of official capacity yet, but they have motioned multiple times that they would be happy to get some resources to assist with that process. So cool.
I have one question about that. Does that mean Novo Foundation wants to be part of the strategic planning, or it would just be a straight up grant for the land bank to hire a consultant of the land bank's choice?
That's a very good question. I think a little bit of both. They have an appropriate role in the planning just in terms of being large funders. We, I think, have been clear that we are an independent public authority. We do not serve at the pleasure of funders. We serve at the for the city. So I think their idea is that they have kind of done this enough times with their many initiatives that they could certainly recommend people that they know have been effective in the past. But we haven't really gotten to that level of detail, I think.
I thought that was a great question and would just caution the complex a funder like paying for a facilitator that they require you to use feels complicated. So just to be really clear as if and as that process moves forward of expectations and, yeah, I thought that was a very good question.
Yeah, definitely. And I think, luckily, so far, I think Novo's goals and our goals are aligned, and but they do understand that we are not Novo soldiers. But luckily, we all seem to be on the same page, and they've been really wonderful to work with over the past.
It would just be unfortunate if we stopped being on the same page and then lost all our money.
That would be unfortunate. That would be extremely unfortunate, which is another good reason that the fundraising committee now exists. And, we hope, I think, in 2021 to diversify our funding. I don't think it's actually an issue, but I also totally understand that there could be a perception that, we're sort of, I don't know, working for Novo, but we're independent, and it's important that we stay that way. So, and they've been very respectful of that. So they're good funding partners for sure. All right. Well, if there's nothing else, I guess anybody can move to adjourn.
I motion to adjourn.
I'll second that.
All in favor of adjourning our October board meeting?
Hi.
Oppose? Abstain? Cool. Thanks, everybody. Motion passes. We're adjourned. Very nice to see you all.
Good night, everyone.
Big things in November.
Bye, everybody.
Yay.
Bye.
Right.